What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome in to Chat Sports. And look, I'm just going to shoot you straight here. I'm about to bash all of your teams and everything they did this offseason. I'm breaking down the worst move for every single team in the NBA. So just get it out of the way. Go ahead, type it in. Type hater in the comment section below before we get going here. I'll give you about 3, 2, 1. All right, is that out of your system? You love to hate on me? Good, let's go. We'll start with the Atlanta Hawks. We'll do it alphabetical order for you. Look, the worst move they made this summer was trading Kent Bazemore for Evan Turner. They also acquired Chandler Parsons, which you could argue would be part of that, but they at least got assets back in that one. They traded for Allen Crabbe, and they got Jones from the Golden State Warriors, the big man Damian Jones. They went out and signed Jabari Parker, but I just didn't like this Evan Turner move. It didn't make a lot of sense for the Atlanta Hawks because it was just a straight-up Evan Turner for Kent Bazemore, which is kind of just lateral if you ask me. Kent Bazemore, I think, is good for the Portland Trailblazers because he had shooting, but Evan Turner, in all reality, just isn't really going to add a whole lot to this Atlanta Hawks team. They didn't get any other assets back. Had they gotten picks, this move probably wouldn't be on this list, but they just straight up traded for Evan Turner. So I guess he's Atlanta's new backup point guard behind Trae Young this next season. I don't really know. I didn't really understand it. I know they wanted to move on from Kent Bazemore, and they did that, but they just acquired Evan Turner. So not an exciting offseason for the Atlanta Hawks outside of the NBA draft. Now the Boston Celtics, they had a very weird offseason, okay? I mean, they lost Kyrie Irving. They thought they had Al Horford back, but that ended up not working out, and that's kind of what plays into this worst offseason move, and that was replacing Al Horford and Aaron Baines, who they also lost, with Enes Kanter. Now look, I guess Enes Kanter's okay. I like him. He did some good things for the Portland Trailblazers, but he's not Al Horford. And I know it's not really their fault that Al Horford went out and got this gigantic deal from the 76ers, but just replacing him with Enes Kanter just doesn't move the needle for me. I think it was smart to at least go out and get a big man. I do think they recovered nicely from losing Kyrie Irving and Horford for that matter with Kemba Walker and Enes Kanter. It's just not enough because on the court, that starting five is good. Kemba, Brown, Hayward, Tatum, Kanter. But once you get past Enes Kanter, your best big man is Robert Williams, and we still have no idea what he is going to be. So it was a tough move. I know they were kind of in a pinch, but not my favorite move from the Boston Celtics. Now the Brooklyn Nets, they made a flurry of incredible moves. They added Kyrie. They got Kevin Durant. Overall, A+ offseason. The move I hated, like I genuinely hated this move, was signing DeAndre Jordan for 4 years and $40 million. Now they have Jarrett Allen. Jarrett Allen is an up-and-coming rim protector. I like him a lot. But then they went out and got DeAndre, I guess, to be the backup to Jarrett Allen, I would hope. But giving DeAndre 4 years, $40 million is too much money and too many years. This is not Lob City DeAndre Jordan from the Los Angeles Clippers that is part of a big three. This is get you some rebounds, catch some lobs, DeAndre Jordan. He doesn't play defense anymore. Trust me, I watched a lot of DeAndre Jordan last season. The dude does not try on defense, so you're not getting the same guy. $10 million for each year for the next 4 years is just too much money. Look, I could have gone with so many different things for the Charlotte Hornets on this one because their offseason was absolutely terribly miserable. If you're a Hornets fan out there, I'm sorry that you're watching this. I'm just going to bash this main move, which was signing Terry Rozier to 3 years, $58 million. You're paying Terry Rozier nearly $20 million per year. Now, I get it. You lost Kemba Walker. You lost Jeremy Lamb, probably your two best players. You had to get somebody. But for this much money, who were you competing against? Who else was going to give that much money to Terry Rozier? I'll give you an answer. No one. Not a single soul. Nobody. Look, 2018 playoff Terry Rozier was fun. He was clutch. He's a good backup point guard during that time. Well, I guess he started because of Kyrie's injury. But I don't even think that version of Terry Rozier is worth this much money. Now, next season, look, they got to embrace the tank. I mean, that's what it's going to be. Full-out tank mode for the Charlotte Hornets. Terry Rozier. Malik Monk, who is fun to watch, but he's not that good. Nicholas Batum making, again, way too much money. Cody Zeller's your big man in the middle, and P.J. Washington's your new draft pick. I like the pick, but he has not shown that he can stay healthy whatsoever. So here's a big question. Who is going to win that race for the number 1 overall pick? Who's going to be the worst team of these two teams in 2019-20? Because I do think these will be the bottom two teams. Think it's going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers, type C in the comment section. Think it's going to be the Hornets, type H in the comment section. I think you can make the argument maybe for the Washington Wizards, but look, between Cleveland and Charlotte, it ain't going to be pretty. On to another Eastern Conference team, the Chicago Bulls. They really didn't make any terrible moves that I just can bash on right now because you know I love to hate, but signing Thaddeus Young was not my favorite move for the Chicago Bulls. I like Thaddeus Young. I think he's a quality veteran. I think he's going to be a quality role player. I just don't really understand it for Chicago because you didn't need a big man. And that's what Thaddeus Young is. He is a power forward. And you're not really playing for anything, I don't think, quite yet. You're not going to make that push for the playoffs. Chicago fans, if I'm wrong, let me know, and I'm sure you will in the comment section. But I don't know. I like Thaddeus Young. I just don't like the fit for the Chicago Bulls. I also don't love the fit for Thaddeus Young because I think he could have been a valuable player for a competitive NBA team. So their roster this next season, it's Kobe White, Levine, Otto Porter, Wendell Carter Jr., and Lauri Markkanen on the court. They signed Thaddeus Young, I would assume, to be Lauri Markkanen's backup, but they just drafted Daniel Gafford. Cristiano Felicio is making too much money not to play, I feel like. So, I don't know. Again, Thaddeus Young, more of a power forward than a small forward in the NBA. Cleveland Cavaliers, we just talked about them racing for the bottom, and that's what they should be doing. But they didn't shop Kevin Love, or they haven't, at least. We haven't heard much about them really shopping Kevin Love. And because their only offseason move was signing J.P. Makura away from the Charlotte Hornets, this was their worst move in my opinion. I think they could have / should have gotten something for Kevin Love while they still can. They just need to embrace the tank. And if Kevin Love is still on board, you cannot fully tank it out. Now, if Kevin Love is healthy, which I hope he is because Minnesota Timberwolves, Kevin Love was one of my favorite players to watch. Even Cleveland Cavaliers, when they were in the finals, Kevin Love was fun to watch. But if he's fully healthy and he's that all-star that he was, which is very doubtful that he ever gets back to that, maybe the Cleveland Cavaliers are interesting. Maybe they win a few games and push for something higher than the number one pick in the draft. Next season, it's all about Colin Sexton and Darius Garland. You got to develop that backcourt because it is the backcourt of the future. Tristan Thompson's in the middle. Not sure how much longer he stays there. Cedi Osman we picked as our breakout player for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And then, the young pieces with Kevin Porter Jr., Jordan Clarkson, Dylan Windler, and even Larry Nance Jr. are some nice pieces for the Cavs. Now let's move on to the Dallas Mavericks. They waited on some players to make their decisions, and Danny Green and some other bigger stars like Kemba Walker, but they of course missed out on them. So the worst move that they actually made was giving Kristaps Porzingis a player option on the 5th year of his max deal. They of course re-signed basically all of their own free agents outside of Trey Burke, and Devin Harris is still a free agent if he doesn't retire. They added DeLon Wright, Seth Curry, Boban. Those were all pretty team-friendly deals. And Porzingis, 5 years max, you had to give it to him. You had to sign him to that much money. I understand that. Giving him a player option on that last year is a little bit questionable to me because we know Porzingis has dealt with injury. Heck, he's coming off not playing for a year and a half. They didn't give him any. They didn't give any injury protections in that deal, so it is all fully guaranteed money. And then on that 5th year, he's the one that gets to decide his future. Questionable move for the Dallas Mavericks on that one. The Denver Nuggets. Again, I don't really think they made any terrible moves this offseason, but I had to pick one. So I'm picking giving Jamal Murray a max extension. 5 years, $170 million for their starting point guard. They also made the move for Jeremy Grant, traded a pick for him. I like that move a lot. They lost Isaiah Thomas. Nah. They lost Trey Lyles. Nah. And they lost Tyler Lydon. Who? Yeah, exactly. Look, Jamal Murray is a great point guard. I think he's a really good starting point guard. Obviously, he helped the Denver Nuggets get to that 2nd seed in the West last season. He deserves a lot of money, but I just don't think he was ready to get that money quite yet. I would have held off just a little bit longer to give him either an extension or just wait till he entered free agency and re-signed him. Again, I don't hate the move because he had a good year last year. 18.2 points per game, 4 rebounds, nearly 5 assists, good 3-point shooter, continuing to come around on defense. I just would have waited a little bit longer until Jamal Murray did all this on a consistent basis to give him that 5-year extension. Detroit Pistons. They did not have an exciting offseason, and that is their problem. They should have done more. They had the 15th overall pick, which they drafted, wait for it, Sekou Doumbouya, 15th overall. But what I think they really should have done, if I'm being honest with myself and you guys, the watchers, They should have shopped that pick plus some of their other young assets, like maybe a Bruce Brown, maybe a Luke Kennard, whatever it may have been, because their window is closing very quickly with Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin is their best player, and he's coming off one of, if not his best, year of his career. And you didn't do enough to add winning pieces around him. You have Andre Drummond. He's great. You signed Derrick Rose. I know NBA fans love to love Derrick Rose, but it's not MVP D Rose. You have Luke Kennard, who's a good shooter. You have Tony Snell. It's all a bunch of, okay, they're fine. Maybe this is an 8-seed team. Had they shopped that 15th overall pick plus a guy like, I don't know, Luke Kennard, Thon Maker, whoever it may have been, maybe they could have gotten some more valuable talent around Blake Griffin. Now let's move on to the Warriors. I mean, it was a weird offseason, man. I mean, the worst move was just the fact that they lost everybody. I mean, they really did. And they added D'Angelo Russell, which, good recovery move. You can flip him for a different piece that fits better somewhere down the road. They signed Willie Cauley-Stein. They signed Alec Burks. And they re-signed guys like Kevon Looney. They drafted Jordan Poole, Alan Smilagic, and Eric Pascal. But the guys that they lost far outweigh the guys that they kept/added. You lost Kevin Durant, arguably, when he's healthy, a top 2 player in the NBA. Andre Iguodala, a key piece for so long on this successful Warriors team. Sean Livingston may retire. He says he wants to play another year. We'll see about that. As a backup point guard/shooting guard, he did really well for them. Boogie Cousins, he was only there for like 30 games. And then Quinn Cook, who actually became a really valuable piece and a valuable 3-point shooter for the Golden State Warriors. Now, what they have on the floor this next season, it's kind of a big question mark all around. You got Steph. You got D'Angelo Russell. How the heck will that fit? You drafted Jordan Poole. How good is that guy really? Draymond Green's your power forward. Willie Cauley-Stein, we have him in there as the starting center. I actually think it'll be Kevon Looney probably. And then your bench is not pretty. So now the question becomes, if you're a Warriors fan, who wins their next title first? Is it Steph Curry or is it Kevin Durant? Type S if you think it's Steph. Type K if you think it's Kevin Durant. I actually don't know. I never want to count out Steph Curry, but I'm also not 100% confident in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So let me know what you think in the comments section. Let's move on to Houston. Look, their worst move was losing basically 4 first-round picks. Because, and I'll tell you why I say basically in parentheses there here in just a minute, but they had to do it to get Russell Westbrook, so I really don't hate this move that much. Look, you had to give up the picks to ship off Chris Paul and get Russell Westbrook. Not a terrible move. It was just their worst move of the offseason. Recapping that trade for you with the Thunder, as if you need reminding. Russell Westbrook, now a member of the Thunder, and then they send Chris Paul, a 2024 first-round pick, a 2026 first-round pick, which is like some kid that's sitting in 4th grade learning the alphabet right now, and then also pick swaps in 2021 and 2025. So that's why I say basically, because with those pick swaps, that basically just means the Oklahoma City Thunder can choose, if the Rockets have better picks then, to acquire them instead of their own. That makes sense? Did you guys follow me on that one? I know, I'm confused too. Let's move on to the Pacers. Now, ironically, their worst move was also the Bulls' worst move, but for Indiana, it was not re-signing Thaddeus Young. Instead of the Bulls, where they signed him, I hate that the Pacers let him walk, because he was a valuable veteran presence to this team that's pushing for a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. I really liked him. Defensively, he was there. He was a hustle player. He was showing that he could learn how to score as well. I like Thaddeus Young a lot for Indiana. And with their depth, it takes a huge hit because you got Domantas Sabonis. You got Miles Turner. You drafted Goga Bitadze. But behind those 3 guys, your next best big man is TJ Leaf. Again, I ask you who? Because TJ Leaf, I don't really trust as a true backup power forward in the NBA. You could have included not re-signing Bojan Bogdanovic on this list as well, but he was costing just way too much money to bring him back to Indiana. So I say missing out on Thaddeus Young is their worst move. Now the Clippers. This one was really difficult to find a bad move because the Clippers had the best offseason in the NBA this year, maybe in NBA history, in acquiring Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. But they had to give up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I know they had to do it, okay? Hear me out, Clippers fans. They had to give him up to get Paul George. But it was still the worst move because He is a quality starting point guard right now, and in the future, he could be a star point guard eventually. I know they had to do it, but it sucks that they did because I love Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I know the Clippers loved him. The Thunder are going to love him. It hurts that you had to give him up, but you got Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, so I think you'll be just fine. Patrick Beverley and Landry Shamet, that's the new backcourt. Lou Williams is coming off the bench, and he's more of a two guard. So your backup point guard, really, you hope it becomes Jerome Robinson, but right now, I don't know who it is. Let's move on to the LA Lakers. Now, their worst offseason move is a funny one because it wasn't really a true transaction. It was the fact that they leaked information on their meetings with Kawhi Leonard. I shouldn't say they. I should say Magic Johnson, who I guess isn't technically affiliated with the Lakers anymore, but he kind of is, he kind of isn't, and he's always around, but he shouldn't be, and it's just like, what the heck is going on? They met with Kawhi, he met with Kawhi, and then Magic was like, hey, media people, here's what happened in that meeting, leaked the information, and then Kawhi Leonard was like, all right, I can't trust this guy, I can't trust this organization, I'm not going there, I'm going to force myself to the other LA team with Paul George. Now look, they still have an incredible team. I mean, they still have a finals-worthy team. LeBron, Danny Green, Anthony Davis, that's really your three best players unless you want to include Kuzma in there as well. Hopefully Boogie Cousins comes back around, JaVale McGee. It's a fun team. Losing out on Kawhi isn't the end of the world, but leaking information on him was just not a smart thing for the Lakers. Now the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm going to absolutely bash this one thing and really this one person. Josh Jackson. They traded for him, but they really traded for him because they wanted DeAnthony Melton and they wanted some draft picks from the Phoenix Suns. Josh Jackson, a former, I believe, number 4 overall pick, is trash. Not just on the court, he is a trash human being off the court. He has done terrible things. He's always in trouble with the law. He did something where he got his 4-year-old high, allegedly, and it's just, I would never take a risk on someone like Josh Jackson. I don't care how talented he is, and that's the problem. This guy isn't talented. He's not good. He's not going to be in the NBA much longer, number 1, because he can't stay out of trouble, and number 2, because he doesn't do anything on the court to help a team. And so the Memphis Grizzlies trading for him take this big risk on a guy that, when he's off the court, you don't know what he's going to do. I think I speak for everybody. When you affiliate yourselves with someone, whether it's work or you're at school, whatever it may be, when someone does something bad, it tarnishes the reputation of the whole organization. That's what Josh Jackson does. That's my rant. So here's what happened in that trade. Javon Carter, Kyle Korver went to the Phoenix Suns from the Memphis Grizzlies. Kyle Korver eventually got waived. Josh Jackson, DeAnthony Melton, and picks to the Memphis Grizzlies. I can't stand Josh Jackson. I don't think he has anything left to bring to the NBA whatsoever. So let me know what team I'm sleeping on the most, because it is hashtag sleeping on season here in the sports world, in the NBA world. So which team am I sleeping on the most? Let me know in the comment section. Just spew your hatred at me. Bring it on. Let's move on to the Miami Heat. I think their worst move of the offseason was not going all in on a Russell Westbrook trade. Now, maybe they didn't have the real assets to actually get it done, but they still lost out on the deal. And maybe it was because they didn't want to include Justice Winslow. Whatever it may have been, I don't know why they didn't. And if they didn't go all in, that's a big problem because Russell Westbrook, you needed another star next to Jimmy Butler, and I think that fit would have been great in Miami. It just didn't happen. Now, Houston gave up a lot. Of course, they quote-unquote gave up Chris Paul, but they also had to give up a ton of picks that Miami didn't really have to offer. So, big question mark there for Miami. Their lineup next season is going to be a lot better than it was this past year. Goran Dragic, Waiters, Jimmy Butler, that's your main new guy. Bam Adebayo stepping into that starting center role. And Justice Winslow hopefully takes a big step forward. But you take Dragic out and put in Russ, and this team is on a whole nother level. Now the Milwaukee Bucks, again, this team was tough because I don't think they really made any moves that made me just want to throw up in my mouth. Just the worst move that I think they did make was giving Chris Middleton 5 years, $178 million. And I know they had to because there was going to be some team that probably offered him a max deal, and the Bucks needed to keep him next to Giannis because he is the only other All-Star. But let's be real, that's a lot of money for Chris Middleton, a guy who really didn't step up all that big in the NBA playoffs. Now, during the regular season, Chris Middleton had a really, really good year. I really liked what he did for Milwaukee. Obviously, that's why he was an Eastern Conference All-Star. 18 points per game, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 37.8% from 3. Oh, and not to mention, he was probably their second best wing defender next to Giannis Antetokounmpo. Again, I don't hate this move, but it wasn't my favorite move by the Bucks this summer. Now let's move on to the Timberwolves. Look, they were just dormant. I mean, just a boring offseason for the Timberwolves, and that was their biggest mistake, was not doing more. Now, they traded up in the draft to go get Jarrett Culver, which I loved. I think that was an incredible move. I think Jarrett Culver is going to be a stud in the NBA. But after that, they didn't do anything. I mean, they lost Derrick Rose, who was a six-man candidate. They lost Taj Gibson, who played valuable minutes for him. They traded away Dario Saric in order to get Jarrett Culver, so I guess that one's kind of whatever. But here's why they should have done more. This starting five is not going to be competitive in the West. Jeff Teague, Jarrett Culver, Andrew Wiggins, Robert Covington, and then it's Karl-Anthony Towns. And Towns is your main guy, but you don't have enough around him. I guess their biggest offseason addition was Jordan Bell? Question mark? All right, New Orleans Pelicans. This was another team that really didn't do anything terrible. And so their worst move was losing Julius Randle, because he was a good player. I mean, he just was. He was a 20-10 guy. He probably had the best, actually not probably, he had the best season of his career in New Orleans last year, but you had to let him walk if you were New Orleans. I mean, he signed with the New York Knicks. They overpaid for him once they lost out on all their star free agent targets. In all honesty, even though he's 20-10, he wasn't a great fit next to Zion Williamson. I believe Enes Kanter said Zion is just Julius Randle with hops. That's just an incredibly bad take, but that fit at Julius at the center and Zion at power forward wouldn't have made a lot of sense anyway. The Pelicans just didn't make any moves that were really that bad. I mean, they didn't make any bad moves if you ask me. I love what they did this offseason with what they put around Zion Williamson. Good summer if you're a Pelicans fan. Now let's move on to the team that Julius Randle actually went to, and it was the New York Knicks. The worst thing they did was that they just didn't embrace the tank. They added a bunch of players, and they drafted R.J. Barrett, but they didn't add enough to go out and compete, really. Maybe they make a push for that 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. Maybe. That's a huge maybe. But the players they added don't really make you great. Julius Randle, I love him. Again, we just said, best season of his career last year. They added Bobby Portis. They added Marcus Morris on a snake move. They added Elfrid Payton and Reggie Bullock. Again, a lot of depth. Also, not to mention on that list is Wayne Ellington. They got the depth, but not enough to compete in the Eastern Conference. Now the question becomes, where will they actually finish? Let me know in the comment section, will they finish 1 through 8, or will they finish below that? Let me know what seed you predict the New York Knicks to land in the Eastern Conference next season. Oklahoma City Thunder. The worst move they made was being forced to take on Chris Paul. And I know Russell Westbrook wanted to go to Houston. You had to do what you had to do to keep him happy, to make him happy. But I just feel like in that Houston Rockets trade, they could have maybe taken a couple less picks or something and instead got some quality young players, or a quality young player like Clint Capella, whatever it may have been, anything but Chris Paul. Because he's not good anymore, because he can't stay healthy, and compared to his contract. I shouldn't say he's not good, because he's still a good point guard. But he's not worth his contract, and he doesn't play because he can't stay healthy. I think another thing that I could have put on here is that they didn't flip Chris Paul right away. Now, maybe they do eventually. Maybe he never sees a minute in Oklahoma City. But if he does, you got a backcourt of CP3 and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And that's where I have question marks. Because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is your starting point guard next year, or he should be your starting point guard of the future, and you've got him playing two guard to Chris Paul. I don't like it. The Orlando Magic, the biggest move they made in free agency was signing Al-Farouq Aminu. I liked that move. I didn't like them drafting Chuma Okeke 16th overall in the NBA draft, because the Magic are trying to make the playoffs. I mean, they were in the playoffs last season, and then you go out and draft a guy who's probably going to miss most of the year, not have an immediate impact. I like Okeke, but I like Okeke as a second rounder or as a late first rounder. I didn't like him 16th overall, because he tore his ACL in the NCAA tournament. Now, had he been healthy, he probably would have fallen in that lottery range, but health is a big issue. That's why he fell out. I guess the Magic felt he was worth that 16th pick. You kind of expect him to be the backup power forward when he gets healthy behind Aaron Gordon, And their depth is pretty good, but then you got to remember, okay, Chuma Okeke's got a torn ACL. Mo Bamba doesn't really stay healthy. And who in the freaking world knows what Markelle Fultz is going to be? So let's move on to Markelle Fultz's old team, the Philadelphia 76ers. Their worst move of the offseason was not bringing back J.J. Redick. You could say maybe trading away Jimmy Butler, but you didn't really want him because he didn't want to be there, so they did a signing trade with him, shipped him out to Miami. I think losing J.J. Redick's going to hurt him more because this team was dying for some spacing. They absolutely needed some three-point shooters. That's all that J.J. Redick is. Of course, he went to the Pelicans in a move that I loved for New Orleans. And last season, he scored 18.1 points per game. I mean, he was the fourth leading scorer, and he scored like 0.6 points less than Jimmy Butler did on the Philadelphia 76ers last season. You can see why they still needed him so bad. This team has Ben Simmons, who can't/won't shoot a three-pointer. They got Josh Richardson, who's okay for floor spacing. Same with Tobias Harris. Joel Embiid and Al Horford. It's a bunch of like average three-point shooters. You need one great three-point shooter, and that could have been J.J. Redick. Now let's move on to the Phoenix Suns. In a gigantic question mark move for me, they gave Ricky Rubio 3 years, $51 million to be their starting point guard next season. Ricky Rubio, a veteran that should help a team that wants to make a push for the playoffs, a team that's looking to make a push for a top 5 lottery pick, went ahead and picked him up. I don't like the fit timeline-wise. I don't even love the fit on the court because it's Ricky Rubio and Devin Booker. If you're the Suns, you want Devin Booker to have the ball in his hands anyway. Ricky Rubio doesn't really allow for that to happen because off the ball, Rubio's useless. So you got Devin Booker, Kelly Oubre, DeAndre Ayton, and Dario Saric. I actually love the pickup of Saric. I love that they re-signed Kelly Oubre, but I'm hating on the move to sign Ricky Rubio. Now the Portland Trailblazers, a.k.a. the Western Conference final competitors last season. I didn't like the fact, actually I hated the fact, that Portland replaced their depth, which they had a lot of it. They had a deep team, with worse depth. Does that make sense? Like, they added a pretty good amount of role players, but it was all just like Walmart versions of their role players from last season. Like last year they had Seth Curry, one of the top 3 three-point shooters in the NBA. They had Al-Farouq Aminu, who became a valuable wing defender and could play some spot power forward minutes. Actually played a lot of power forward minutes. They had Enes Kanter like halfway through the season who stepped up big in the playoffs. They replaced him with Hassan Whiteside. Now, if Hassan Whiteside's healthy, if he's really engaged, which who knows if that's going to happen, then yeah, he's better than Enes Kanter. But who knows? We'll see. Maurice Harkless, they lost him to the Clippers, replaced him with, I guess, Kent Bazemore or Mario Hezonja, and then they traded Evan Turner, who they actually did replace with Kent Bazemore. So now, the big question becomes, how far is Portland going to go in the playoffs next season? I mean, they made the Western Conference Finals last year. Super impressive. Damian Lillard had one of the best runs in the NBA playoffs last year. But how far will they go next season? Let me know in the comment section. Sacramento. They made actually some pretty sneaky good moves, but the one that I didn't like, that I think a lot of NBA fans did like for some reason, was signing Trevor Ariza for 2 years, $15 million. Too much money for a guy who is not the same player he was, can't hit the three like he did, and also doesn't play defense as well as he used to. He doesn't stay that healthy. I don't really like what they did. I think they could have taken that money that they spent on Trevor Ariza and spent it on a better shooter. I mean, once Trevor Ariza got moved back to Washington, he was a 32% three-point shooter last season. I didn't love this move. I'm hating on it, if you ask me. 12.5 points, 5 rebounds, and only 33% from three is not worth 2 years, $15 million. Now let's move on to the Spurs, who, poor Spurs, they got snaked out by Marcus Morris, and their worst move was that they traded Davis Bertans. Now on the surface, it doesn't look that bad, but then when you realize they traded Davis Bertans to free up space to go get Marcus Morris, that's when it hurts you. Bertans now with the Washington Wizards shot 47.6% from three before the All-Star break. He shot it really well after. He shot 42.6% for the season. And now the Spurs lose a valuable member of their team who spaced the floor really well. I mean, outside of Marco Bellinelli, Patty Mills, they didn't really have anyone that could space the floor like Bertans. Now, that trade was a part of a 3-team deal that eventually netted the Spurs DeMarre Carroll. They reworked that to work out the way they needed it to. It hurts if you're the Spurs because you give up a good young player for DeMarre Carroll. Not that good. Toronto Raptors. Everybody shed a tear. Put a sad face in the comment section like I did. They lost Kawhi. They really didn't make any bad moves this summer. I mean, they got Stanley Johnson and Hollis Jefferson on like a basically for nothing deal. Low risk, low reward, I guess. But losing Kawhi, it sucks. I mean, it is the worst move of their off season. And this is the two that they lost together. It wasn't just one of them. It was Kawhi, their best player by a mile, and Danny Green, their best shooter by a mile. That's two key pieces to a championship team that are just gone now. And, you know, what they have on the floor is still respectable. I think it's still a playoff team. Kyle Lowry, OG Anunoby is going to be fun to watch break out this next year. I like Marc Gasol still, and Pascal Siakam is officially coming into his own. But it ain't Kawhi Leonard. Let's just be honest. At Utah Jazz, they had a great offseason. I actually really loved what they did. They added Mike Conley. They signed Bojan Bogdanovic. They got Jeff Green and Ed Davis. But I just didn't like that Jeff Green and Ed Davis were the replacements for Derek Favors. Because Derek Favors is a good piece, a good player. He was a quality front court guy for the Utah Jazz, and he fit perfectly next to Rudy Gobert. So when you replace Favors with two guys in Jeff Green and Ed Davis, it hurts you just a little bit. But they made up for it in what they did for the rest of the offseason. Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, that's your new backcourt. Joe Ingles, Rudy Gobert, that's your new forward pairing duo type thingy. And Rudy Gobert is your big man in the middle that absolutely nobody is ever going to score on. Let's move on to our last team in the NBA, possibly the worst team in the NBA behind Charlotte and Cleveland, the Washington Wizards. The move that I didn't love and that I didn't really understand was the fact that they just said, hey, Lakers, we'll take on your three trash players so you can go out and get Anthony Davis and do whatever else you need to do. They took on Mo Wagner, Isaac Bonga, and Jamario Jones, and it was just like I don't know why they did it. Now, of course, the Lakers needed to do it. They had to get rid of that money to make this trade work with Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, and then Anthony Davis, the picks and everything. They had to figure out some way to dump whatever they could. Now, if the Washington Wizards did get something that I actually liked in this deal, it's Mo Wagner. He's a first-round pick for a reason. He's not just complete trash, okay? He showed that he can stretch the floor. He can be a stretch five at some point in the NBA, but he's got so much to prove. And I just didn't love that Washington just took on all the money just because. Maybe somewhere down the road it's hey, Lakers, we'll scratch your back if you'll scratch our back somewhere down the road. And maybe Mo Wagner actually turns out okay. Well, let me know. But, big question now, because I hated on a lot of teams. I mean, I took a big old dump on some teams in this video, actually. So what team did I disrespect the most? Let me know in the comment section. If it was your team, let me know, because it is #disrespect season. So, let me know in the comment section.